Today on In the Woodyard, we got the brand new HUSQVARNA 562XP Mark II chainsaw. We're going to talk about it, we're going to run it, we're going to cut some wood right here, right now. So this brand new 562 HUSQVARNA XP Mark II chainsaw has a 24-inch light bar on it, which is what I wanted. It normally comes with a 20-inch bar, which is kind of the standard size for it. But I like 24-inch bars. That's what I run on all my other saws, and I like uniformity, so that's kind of what I wanted. And you can put up to a 28-inch bar on it. Now, I personally think because of the CC size, the size of the saw, I think 24 is probably good enough. Now, there's guys that put 28s on, and they say they're fine. I just know from my experience cutting, that's not necessarily the best thing to go as big as possible. My 572s, my 592, I run 24-inch bars on those too. I just like that size bar. I cut a lot of times in piles, and when I can stand up straight and I can cut through without hitting the ground, because that's a thing, and a lot of people think they gotta have the longest bar that they can possibly put on their saw. It's not necessarily a good thing. Now, if you're super tall, long arms, and you're big and strong, not like me, weak and old, maybe you can go with a bigger saw, but I'm wimpy. I like this size bar. It just seems to work really good for me. The chain speed is really good on it. If you go longer, your chain speed is going to decrease. Some people say no, it doesn't, but yes, it does. This particular saw is a brand new and improved saw, and the reason they did it is because, and a lot of people know this, some of you may not, but the original 562 had a lot of problems. They had problems with the bearings, and HUSQVARNA knew it. That saw was out for 10 or 11 years, something like that, the original one. And luckily, for those of you that bought them and used them, HUSQVARNA was really good. From what I've heard from a lot of guys, they either gave you a new saw or they fixed it. So that's good. They stood behind their product. They knew they had a problem, so that was an issue. But this one is new and improved. So this is basically everything that the 572 and the 592 is, the Mark II. Big improvements on it. There's not a lot of cosmetic things that are differently. Obviously it says Mark II right here, which you can barely see, which I don't know why they put that so small, but it's teeny weeny. It does have a few extra markings on it. I think this line here is additional. There's a little change up in here. Not a lot changed on it as far as the way it looks. The weight I think is similar. Horsepower is similar, it's same there, and it's a 59.8 cc, so 60 cc. I have only started this. We caught 2 or 3 pieces of wood one time when I got it just the other day. Bert and I started it up. But today I'm going to do some actual cutting with it and find out what it's really like and see what she'll do. And I'm going to do some cutting with this. And I'm going to grab one of my 572s and just see how close it is. Because that's kind of where a lot of guys are, I find, when they're trying to buy a saw or make an improvement or buy a bigger saw. You're trying to decide between those two happens a lot. From what I understand, the 562 is the #1 selling pro saw that they make. This is considered a pro saw, the XP series. And I think it's because of the size. I think what happens is a lot of homeowners or part-time guys that cut once in a while but want a better saw, instead of getting like a 455 Rancher or a 460, they go up with the professional grade saw, better components, a little better made. They pay just a little bit more money and they get a much better saw. So I think that's why that is the reason this sells so well. And this new one I think is going to sell really well for them if they've got all the bugs worked out, which I've heard they have. Now, I was supposed to get this saw months ago, but there was a big mix-up. Not that I ordered it. I had talked to the rep and he was going to get me one, and it got sent to the wrong dealership, and so it had to be rerouted and go all through the United States. So I've been waiting for this for like a couple months now, because I know they've been out for a while, but I just finally got it, so we're going to try it. And my brother has a 562, the old version, and I've run that, and it's an okay saw. He hasn't had any issues with his yet. He likes it, but he always tells me when he uses it, he wishes it had a little bit more power. He's so used to his 372s and the 572s and his 395 that to him this is a wimpy little saw. But now that we're both getting older, we're like, this might become our favorite saw because it does what the other ones do, just not quite as fast or as powerful. Now this saw sells for right around $800, just a hair over, which is, if you're comparing it to a lot of the other saws in its size class, whether you're comparing the smaller homeowners or the ranch type saws, It costs a little bit more, but I think you get more. It's just better built. It just is. And I think that a lot of people that are, wavering between this and a 572, my opinion, I like the 572 a lot because I like the little bit more power. But we'll find out. We're going to compare the two today, so that'll be interesting. One of the other reasons I like this size bar, the 24-inch bar with the 3/8 pitch, it's the same bar and chain I run on all my saws. So when I buy chains, I buy a case of chains, I buy a few bars, and I'm good. It covers all my saws. 592, 572, and now the 562. I also have a smaller saw, the 540, but that does have a smaller bar on it. It's a different pitch. It's the .325 pitch, which I really don't like. The safety chain, to me it's just wimpy. I don't like it. I like the 3/8. I also like the 404 chain that I have on my 3120, and I have two of those now. We're going to talk about those on another video, so it's time to shut up and get cutting. So one of the huge differences between this saw and the 572 is it is lighter, quite a bit lighter, and I like that. But I also like chain speed. I like being able to cut and let the saw do the work. I find when I use the smaller saws, I end up pushing more, leaning more, rocking more, that kind of stuff like a lot of people do. But we'll find out how this baby does. First impression, it's very pretty. It's the same exact design and look that I have on my 572s. They haven't done a change on their scabbards that you get now. It is a more full scabbard with more space for the chain to go in, and then it's got a narrow spot so it actually will then pinch the bar a little bit better. So I like that. A lot of my scabbards are all tore up on the bottom from the chains going out. We'll see how this one does. So I really like this, so that's kind of cool. Other than that, like I say, first impressions, I like the way it looks. I like the way it feels. So they do at Modern Rentals, where I got the saw, they do set them up, they do run them, they make sure everything's good, they put some fluids in, they kind of check them over, they do set them, oops, didn't want that to go in there. They do set them up pretty well, and there is some gas in here. It's about half full, but I'm going to fill it up the rest of the way because I want to try to cut a tank. Looks like I overfilled. I've never done that before. That's the first time that's ever happened. Of course, that's just a joke. And there's HUSQVARNA oil in there because I know that's what they use, but I'm going to be mixing in some of the other stuff here because, in my opinion, bar oil is bar oil. So I just fueled up the new 562. Here is a 572 XPG. That's one of my newer ones. And then here's the little 540. Now, the difference between the 562 and the 572 horsepower wise, I think this one is 4.7 and this one is 5.8. So you gain a little more than 1 horsepower. Weight wise, I am not positive on it, but it seems to me that the 572 weighs like 2 pounds more. It might be 1.5 pounds, something like that. But yeah, it's a lighter saw, so you're gonna be able to run it longer. Not quite the same speed you're gonna get from it, but maybe that sacrifice is okay because you can run it longer, and a lot of guys like that. The little 540 is super light. I don't think this even weighs like 8 pounds or something like that. It's super light. But it's a nice little saw. I'll flip these around so you can see the tops. See the differences on the tops here. Move these closer. So the new 562 has the solid orange, whereas the old 562 has this plastic insert here. Plastic on plastic, but it's a different look. The other thing that I did notice that this has, and I'm not sure if it's because it's how they ordered it for me, this one has double dogs. And even my 572 has a single dog. And I think that I would like to have double dogs on my 572s. And the 592 also comes with double dogs like this. So I'm not sure if that's standard or if that's just how they ordered it for me. Now the one that my brother has, the old model 562, he only has a single dog, but there is spots where you can mount outside dogs, and this one has it too on the 572. So you can add extra dogs, and I like the double dogs. I really do like that a lot. When you're cutting on a piece, it's nice to have 2 points of contact on your log so that when you're doing your little roll, you got some digging there, and I like that a lot. So I wish this had them, and I may just buy some and put some on my 572s because I have 3 of them. And then all my saws from the 592, well, actually from the The 3120, the 592, the 572s that I have, and the 562 will all have double dogs. And of course, the little guy here only has a single, and that's kind of how it comes. Size-wise, this one does look bigger, no doubt about it. But everything else is the same. It's got the same starting procedure. You pull up and out and up for your choke, and when you get it started, you just flip it down, and it goes into the run position. When you want to shut it off, you just push down and it kills it. Same as on the 572, you pull up and in, and then down to run, and then push it down, which makes a lot of sense, because to me, you turn something off, you push it down, kind of like a light switch. Some other saws do it other ways. I like this better. It does have the same exact caps. They are keeper caps. As you turn them, it goes probably about a little more than one full turn, and it's got a keeper in there so it stays in. Same on all of them. They all work the same. What else is different? They all have primers, so you can prime them. Some guys are anti-priming. They're afraid of it or something. I don't know. It works. These are all auto-tune, which I like, because as a lot of you know, I am not a mechanic. I just want it to run. So I want to start them. I want to do a cut to make sure everything's tuned correctly, and I want them just to work. I don't want to dink around with trying to get everything perfect for what I want or what I think is right. And I'm not a professional, I'm not a mechanic. I just want it to work. The improvements they've made on these saws over the years with how their auto-tune works is fantastic, I think. I think it works just fine. But that's just me. Some guys like to do their own mechanical work and fix stuff in the field and play with stuff and tweak it and play with it. Not me. I just want to cut. I just want it to work. Kind of like an automatic transmission in a vehicle versus having a manual. Manuals are kind of cool, but there's a reason everybody's going away from them. They've kind of got them figured out. So there it is. Let's start these puppies up. So I just carried over the 562 and the 572 over here because I'm going to run the 562 first. And then I'm going to go to the 572 and just kind of go back and forth to make comparisons. Both the chains are fairly new. Both the chains are pretty sharp from what I can tell. The one difference is obviously this is a little bigger saw. And some of you that aren't familiar with my channel is I put these zip ties on here because from the bar to the end is 16 inches. That's how I measure my cuts. So when I'm cutting, I know how big to make the rounds. So I try to stay fairly consistent. If it goes 15 inches, it's not the end of the world. If it goes 17, it's not the end of the world. And I don't use them for every single cut. I tend to use them more often just kind of as a guide because I kind of know how big to make them, but I want to be fairly close. And when you switch from a real small log to something that's bigger, it sometimes can throw you off a little bit. So we're going to fire this baby up here, let her warm up, and then we're going to cut. Now, like a lot of you, I prefer to not have my legs cut. So I wear chaps, I wear steel toe boots. These are Hikes boots. These are the HUSQVARNA technical chaps. I have a new Protos helmet. I wear earplugs and the muffs. Drowns out all the sound. Because I cut so much, I have some hearing loss, and because I hunt and I do a lot of shooting, I have some hearing loss. I'm trying to save what I've got so that I don't have to say, huh, any more than I have to. This new Protos helmet, like a lot of you saw this, I just did a review on this just the other day. If I can get them down, here we go. Built-in glasses and the screen. So very nice, I like them a lot. So we're gonna do some cutting. Okay, for me, this will be the very first starting of the saw. Turn the choke on, we're gonna prime it a couple times here. And we're gonna see what happens. Seems to have farted, now I can turn the choke off. Now, one thing I'm going to do is I am going to let the saw warm up. Wow, I did not expect that. This thing really cuts. I got a feeling when I go to my 572, I won't feel much difference. This is a little lighter. It does have the X cut chain on there, which maybe that makes a difference. The chain on here is just cut and just excellent. It's brand new chain. Well, it is on the other saw too. But this is really nice. I just may have found my my new favorite saw. I think I could run this all day long. It's not even like work because it's lighter. The saw cuts great. I did have one spot towards the end there. I was cutting on a crotch. It was a crotch from a big split in the tree. And I could tell that I had to work a little bit to get through it, but everything else cut great. Now I cut a bunch of elm in here. There was some maple, hard and soft. There was some white oak and some red oak. There was some box elder. I saw a piece of aspen in here. So I cut all different kinds of stuff. The softer wood, like the box elder and the aspen, cut really easy. I cut in butter, which is normal. But the oak and the elm cut really good. The hard maple cut really good. I like it, and I like it a lot. All right, let's run the 572. I'm gonna go back and forth, make a couple cuts with each one of them and see what happens. Okay, so I chucked the rounds all the way, and I started up the 562XP and no, I'm not going to turn the heated handlebars on today. It's going to leave it off. But I'm going to compare it because it's the newest 572 that I have to compare it to the 562. And I can tell right away when I started this one up to warm it up, starts a little harder, pulls a little harder, sounds a little deeper. So there's a difference. But I got to say, that 562, awesome. Okay, let's do some cutting with the big boy now. Okay, so my first impressions of running the bigger saw versus the smaller saw. The 572, it has more torque. When you hit the trigger, it's got more. That extra horsepower does make a difference because it's 4.7 or 5.8. There's a difference. but it is heavier, so I noticed that right away too. I think it cuts a little faster, but not a lot faster. So for those of you, I think, that are going to be people that maybe want a saw that's good enough to cut almost anything and not be a saw that's going to hurt you as far as wear you out, the 562 I think is going to be a very good choice. I think I'm going to be using it a lot. I noticed when I was cutting that wood over there, the softer stuff, the box elder, there was some aspen, there was some elm, some ash, stuff like that. It cut fantastic. The oak, a little bit different. I could tell it had a little more work to do. And I cut a piece, like I mentioned, that had a big knot in it, a big crotch, and I could tell it was working more, whereas the 572, it just powers through that stuff like nothing. Now, I came over here because the wood that's over there is kind of a mix of stuff. There was some oak in there. There was a little bit of white oak, a little bit of red oak, ash, elm, maple, box elder, aspen, stuff like that. That's what was in there. This is all oak. And this will be the true test here to really test the difference. So I'm going to start both saws, and I'm going to cut some cookies basically, because that's the only way you can really do it. Because when you're cutting in a pile, you really don't get a feel for it as far as direct comparison side by side. So I'm going to cut some cookies off of these chunks of oak here. It's harder wood, so I'll make a couple cuts with one, I'll make a couple cuts with another, then go back to the other saw and just kind of do like a couple series with each saw here and just get a better feel for it. So that's what we're going to do right now. So there's the cookies we just cut. Both saws cut excellent. This is very hard red oak that's dry. This was dead standing. If you guys can see, there's cracks all the way through, right, almost into the middle. Very, very dry wood, ready to burn right now, which is awesome. I like buying the dead standing stuff. So the 562 cut great. The 572 cut greater. It just pulls a little bit more, has a little bit more snooze, as my late father-in-law used to say. She's got some snooze. It just has a little bit more power. And 1 horsepower does make a difference. You go from 4.7 to 5.8. You're increasing by, what would that end up being? 20% maybe? 20% is more. It just is. But this being lighter, this is actually kind of almost more fun to run because you don't work as hard. So for the guy that is trying to decide between the two, if you're cutting a lot of wood, you're trying to do production, the 572 would be my choice. But if you're a guy that's going from a 40 or 50 cc saw and you only want just a little bit better, maybe you're an older gentleman or gentlewoman, and you want a saw that you can run longer comfortably, the 562 is awesome. I will be using this a lot, especially when I'm cutting small stuff. This will be just a great saw. I really like it a lot. So the stable grows. I like both the saws, keeping both the saws. So both saws are awesome. They both run great. They both cut great. If I had to pick just one, it'd be 572 because I do a lot of production. I want the saw to cut as fast as possible, as long as possible, and I want to have tank after tank after tank. Where the price difference, and that's kind of why I'm bringing this up, the price difference, this one sells for a little over $1,100. It's like $1,150-ish, somewhere in there, give or take. This one here sells for just a little over $800. So you're talking about a $300, $350 difference. If you're trying to decide between the two and you're not a high production kind of person, 562. The 562 is an awesome saw. It runs really great. In the future, I'll be running it a lot more. I'll be comparing it a lot more. We'll see how she holds up over time. But because of all the improvements they've made on it, I'm quite sure they learned their lesson, that they needed to do a better job. And I heard, the rumor was that when they had the original 562, they had some suppliers that the components weren't quite what they wanted to be, but they had to get them out because it is such a popular saw. So there's people that had problems, and they did fix those problems with this version here, and they repaired for people that needed it. 562 XP Mark II HUSQVARNA, awesome saw. I like it, and I like it a lot. That's all there is for today, folks. Thanks for watching. Come on back tomorrow. Tomorrow we're gonna get the big saws out, the 3120, the big monsters. I have 2 of them. Yes, 2, a new one and an old one. We're gonna run them both on some big wood. Tomorrow morning, 5:30. Good night, Irene.